This podcast is supported by FX's English Teacher. Last year's critically acclaimed series returns to follow Evan, Gwen, and Marky as they vie for their students' divided attention. See why Cosmopolitan called its premiere season a masterclass of comedy, while Glamour raved it's the year's funniest and most heartwarming new comedy series. FX's English Teacher, all new Thursdays on FX. All episodes now streaming on Hulu.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Hello everybody and welcome to 3D Printing Basics. I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in getting every single episode a week before its release and ad-free, then please head over to my Patreon. The link will be in the show notes, and like I said, you can get every single episode ad-free and a week before its initial release date. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you like this episode. Hello and welcome back to 3D Printing Basics. This is episode number 79, and in this week's episode we are going to be going over different type of bed adhesion helpers for your 3D printer. I know bed adhesion is the number one most important thing when it comes to 3D printing. If you don't have good bed adhesion, then you simply won't have a good print. End of story. There's no way to get around it. So if you are finding that just the build plate by itself is not good enough, then we're going to be going over some helpers or some additives that you can use to help ensure good bed adhesion on your 3D prints. Alright, with that being said, let's jump right into it with adhesion aid number 1. And this is kind of a blast from the past. Nobody really uses it anymore, or at least I haven't seen anybody use it in a long time. But blue painter's tape used to be the number one bed adhesion aid. I remember when I was just getting started in 2020, 2021. Almost every single YouTuber I watched when I was trying to get into it used blue painter's tape in one way or another, whether they laid it down flat and covered the entire bed, whether they covered just sections of it, maybe where the corners were. Everybody used blue painter's tape, and it never made sense to me to use it as a bed adhesive. It was just really interesting. I didn't see the purpose. It didn't seem flat to me, but then I tried it and it actually worked really, really well. It works great for PLA. It has really good first layer adhesion, which is why it was very popular. I would just say it's been passed up by most, if not all, of the next couple adhesives that we're going to talk about. But it was very inexpensive. It was widely available. Once it was done, you could just take it off and throw it away and quickly slap down some new tape, and it was like you had a brand new bed to print on. Some of the negatives to it was that it wears down quickly. You could only really use it once or twice before you needed to change it out, which wasn't a huge deal because it was so inexpensive, but it definitely can get annoying spending that time almost every single print laying down some new tape. The surface texture and the overlaps can definitely transfer to your print. So if you have an area where maybe the overlap is not so great, you will definitely see that lip or that line in the bottom layer of your print. And overall, it's only really good for PLA. It's not super great for PETG, TPU, ABS, other high temperature filaments. So it only really had that good use for the one specific use case of PLA. But overall, I would say it was definitely a nice, cheap option that was very popular in kind of the glass bed era, before PEI sheets really came around. The second adhesion aid that I'm going to talk about is glue stick, and this is something that I have a lot of experience with. When I was first starting out, I used glue stick a ton. I used it almost too much. Well, definitely too much at some points, to where it would build up and it would just be way too much. So overall, glue stick, it was kind of in the same group as the blue painter's tape. It was in the glass bed era that glue stick would like to be used. I still see some people using it nowadays, but overall I think there are much better options than glue stick nowadays. but it was also very cheap. It was easy to apply and easy to wash off as well. You just needed some hot soapy water and you could wash it right off. It worked with PLA and ABS, so that kind of gave it the advantage over the blue painter's tape. The painter's tape didn't work so well with ABS. Glue stick definitely did. And some of the negatives about glue stick is, like I said, it can build up on the bed. I definitely had issues where I definitely wasn't washing it off enough, so that was probably more my fault than the glue stick's fault. But I would just put it on in one layer after another to the point where it would build up so much that it would actually interfere with the print. And probably the biggest issue with glue stick is it's almost impossible to get an even flat application. So chances are it's going to be uneven. As we know, just glue stick overall, it's a weird thing. It doesn't come out smooth. It doesn't come out even. And so that can cause bumps or divots in your print depending on how uneven it is. And like I said, another annoying thing about it, that was the reason why I stopped using it, is because you need to clean the build plate frequently, which I didn't do. And so overall, glue stick, it worked well. It just was a pain to kind of clean up and keep working well. And just overall, the uneven application was what ruined it for me. If I couldn't get a flat layer because of no adhesion, glue stick wasn't going to help get a flat layer, so that is why I didn't end up using it. But it is definitely a good cheap option to start out with if you are just getting into adhesion aids. Hello everybody, this is Tyler with 3D Printing Basics. There is no sponsor for this week's episode, so I wanted to tell you guys about my Patreon. I'm sure as you guys know, as there is an intro in every single episode that talks about it, you can get every single episode of my podcast ad-free and a week early if you head over to my Patreon. But I'm going to be making some changes. I'm going to create a Discord community so that everybody who supports me on Patreon can get access to this Discord so that we can talk about 3D printing issues, we can talk about 3D printing in and of itself, we can talk about anything that you guys want. So I think that would be really, really fun. And then I'm also going to create a second tier where if you subscribe to that, then you will be getting a bonus episode that I will be releasing once a month. I'm just going to talk about 3D printing in general. Any suggestions you guys have, I will talk about it. I may even bring somebody on for an interview or just talk to them about 3D printing in general. So I'm really excited for all of these new things coming to the Patreon. But as always, there is a link down in the description below. If you guys are interested in supporting me, I would really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to add this new value to the Patreon. So please head on over there and subscribe if you are interested. I would really appreciate the support. If not, no worries. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I hope you continue to enjoy my episodes for free from here on out. This next adhesion aid that I want to talk about kind of rounds out the old-fashioned or old style of adhesion aids before PEI sheets and specialty tacky surfaces came out. I would say hairspray went along with glue stick and painter's tape as kind of the big three of adhesion aids when it came back to the early days of 3D printing and before Bamboo Labs came around. I would say that these three were kind of the main use. And hairspray overall I thought was the best in my opinion. It definitely stuck the best. It went on flat and it worked very well for any kind of filament that you were using, whether it was PLA, PETG, TPU, ABS. Overall, I would definitely say hairspray was the best of these three. You could spray it directly onto the bed surface. It worked really well if you had a glass or a flat bed. For example, if you had the Prusa Smooth PEI sheet, it worked really well for that. Again, this is another thing that was cheap. It was easy to find. You can get it at almost any store. You walk into a salon, they have tons of it. It's really, really nice to find. Super cheap. And it provides a very thin sticky layer, which I think was probably one of the big pluses, is that it almost wasn't there. So overall, you didn't really have to adjust too much. Like for blue painter's tape, you had to adjust your Z offset. You had to raise it up a little bit. Glue stick, it was uneven. Hairspray, it's thin, it's even, and it's sticky. So overall, it was kind of the best of the three. It incorporated all of the good elements. Some of the bad things of it, though, is that it is messy. You overspray pretty much everywhere. There's no real way to contain the hairspray, so you end up getting hairspray on the parts where it's important to not get any hairspray. In fact, you would want these places to slide, like the linear rods, the places where the hot end or the bed slides. So overall, unless you are taking some really, really particular steps to prevent overspray, you're going to get hairspray in some places that you didn't want. And if you use it enough without washing it off, it will end up building up a residue just like the glue stick. So that is definitely something to consider. Although it won't build up as quickly as the glue stick, it still will build up if you aren't washing it off enough. But overall, out of these big three, we can kind of call the classic options. I would say hairspray, in my opinion and in my personal experience, was the best one to use. I never used blue painter's tape. I used glue stick and had some problems with it. So hairspray, if you have a glass bed or kind of an older style printer, hairspray is definitely a good additive to look into when you are trying to get better first layer adhesion. Okay, now that we've kind of discussed the classic or older style bed adhesion solutions, let's talk about kind of the modern ones, options that kind of came around in the last couple of years and have really taken over as the primary adhesion aids when it comes to 3D printing. So number one is definitely going to be the most popular, and that's going to be the new PEI sheets. I remember these becoming popular with kind of the release of Bamboo Labs and their print sheets that they had. It definitely became popular during that time. But PEI sheets, it's a special material that comes on top of these textured and smooth plates, and it's supposed to aid with adhesion. Its whole thing is that when it heats up, it really grabs the print. So if you're using a heated bed, it's perfect because when it heats up, it's supposed to get sticky and really hold on to those 3D prints. And then when it cools down, it's supposed to let go, no problem, really easy. And that was kind of the selling point of these PEI sheets. And like I said, they're reusable, they're long lasting, they have reliable adhesion, and they are definitely my go-to. I used PEI sheets for years and years and years. I'm still using them. They're fantastic. The only thing that I would say about them is that over time they can lose their grip, but by over time I'm talking about over years they can lose their grip. So you definitely need to replace these guys. Probably once a year is best. It could definitely cost more in the long run, but overall I would say PEI sheets are the best because you don't have to use any additives, which means you don't need to have anything to maybe wash off the bottom of your print. And the other kind of bad thing that I've noticed is that some materials need extra adhesives anyway. So if you're using a really high temperature print, like let's say PEEK in engineering grade material, if you're using Ultim 1010, or if you're using even something like ABS, something that basically uses a bed temperature of 100 degrees Celsius or higher, you will most likely need to add something anyway to your bed, which can be frustrating because you have this PEI sheet and then just to add something anyway, it feels like you're putting a hat on a hat. So that is definitely something to think about, but overall, PEI sheets are still fantastic. I love using them. I still use them today, and if your printer doesn't have a PEI sheet, whether it be smooth or textured, I recommend textured. I would recommend you go buy one right now because it will change your life. All right, the last adhesion aid that I want to talk to kind of goes hand in hand with the PEI sheets. It's something that you add to them if you're using these high temperature materials that I just talked about, and that's going to be Magigoo, which is what is commonly known as, or it also, Bamboo Labs has their own version. I'm not sure what they call it, but Magigoo is what it's commonly known as. And what this is, it's a specialized 3D printing adhesive. It comes in a bottle. It has an applicator. You basically use it like a glue stick on top of the surface, and it comes out as a liquid. And when you heat up the bed, it dries and becomes tacky, and it has the same exact it has the same exact sort of working ability as these PEI sheets. When you heat up the bed, it becomes sticky and it really grabs the 3D print, and when it cools down, it lets go, it doesn't become as sticky, and it should result in clean releases every single time. And Magigoo is something that I really like using. I used it a lot when I had my older Prusa printers that only had smooth PEI sheets because the smooth sheets did not grab as well as the textured ones. So you would add that layer of Magigoo and it really works well. I would say it's noticeably tacky, which is something that I can't say with the PEI sheets. They still grab, but the PEI sheets are not noticeably tacky. Magigoo, I can put my finger there on the heated build plate and I can feel the tackiness. So that's definitely something that's really nice. The only thing I would say is that when it cools down, it doesn't release like advertised. It's still a little tacky, especially if you have a couple of layers worth of Magic Goo on there. The more layers you build up, the more tacky it's going to get, especially when it cools down. So that is definitely something to think about. And the only other con that I can definitely think of is that it is more expensive. It's not much more expensive. I think personally it's worth it in the long run, but it is more expensive. And you can definitely get some of the Magic Goo residue on the bottom of your prints. They are simple enough to wash off with just some warm water, but you still need to go through that process, which is just an extra step to think about. But overall, Magic Goo and a PEI sheet, I feel you can't go wrong with that. It's going to work really well most of the time. And that is going to end up being my personal recommendation, just getting a textured PEI sheet. And if you notice that it's not sticking as well as it should, a layer of Magic Goo or Bamboo Labs version of Magic Goo. That's what I've been using, and it's been working really, really well. That combination is just tough to beat. It's really, really easy to use. If you need to wash it off, some warm water. You don't even need soap. Warm water, and it washes right off. And then you can reapply and get right back to it. But if you're just printing PLA, you only print PLA, maybe PETG and TPU every once in a while, you'll be just fine with these textured PEI sheets. They grip really well and they last for a long, long time. So that would be my official suggestion for today's episode. And with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys were able to learn something about bed adhesives and how they help, and you are able to make a decision on which one will work best for you. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all your guys' supports. If you want to support me more, then I would really appreciate you guys going over to my Patreon. There you can support me, and an added perk is that you get all of my episodes a week early and ad-free. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.